Good day, everyone, and welcome to our Q&A podcast,
Hello.
I am back at.
Yeah,
after
welcome.
Taking a whipping from you guys last week.
I don't
feel
think
like,
you took a whipping.
Well, I just know that my name was used a lot.
We missed
And
you.
it was used in affectionate ways only.
I did feel loved. I thought, when you rib somebody, I always heard that on job sites and stuff, if you
Yeah.
get teased, it's because they like you. If no one ever says anything about you, that's when you got to be concerned.
That's
So-
exactly right.
Because we love you so much, Blake. Teaches you for leaving.
So yeah,
That's right. And I don't think we were bugging you as much as just making some observations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly it was blaming that we went way shorter because,
That's
and we
true,
were way
yes.
more in agreement without you here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they were just observations.
Right.
That's interesting.
Practically scientific.
Yeah. So that's all. We'll just leave it there.
All right. Well, we got a couple of questions, and I'm glad to be here. This is cool being in this new little studio. You guys have got to talk about it, but I haven't. So yeah, I'm excited. So if you're watching,
If
you
this
can
is
see
our
us.
third time and you're first.
If you're listening, then
third?
Oh, were we
it means
upstairs last
nothing.
week? Yeah, we were still
Yep.
upstairs. Sorry.
Yeah. We ripped the cameras out last week right after the podcast. We finished and I started ripping technology out of the
Yeah,
sanctuary.
that's right. You guys
Right.
were. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, let's go to the first question. So,
You're
Mike.
such a slave driver. This is why we give you a hard time.
Well, I'm trying to keep us. I got in trouble for being the one reason it goes so long. So here I am trying to make it short.
Oh, man.
Yes. So this might go along with your sermon that you had last week, but the question is, what is the significance of John the Baptist going into the desert to preach? Is that where all the sinners and outcasts lived?
Well, the Bible doesn't say that's where they lived. The Bible actually goes a different way and says people went out into the desert to see him and to hear him. And if you listen to the message last week that we talked about the wilderness, I think the significance of the wilderness is the reality of just the need to step away from the normalcy of life to go seek God. I think there's value in that. I think John living in the wilderness probably was a spiritual discipline that he embraced as this radical commitment to God that he had, and this radical call of God on his life that he lived in the wilderness, and that's where he was. That's where he was going to preach, and if you wanted to hear him, you needed to go where he was because there was no internet.
Yep. I did hear something recently too, that the significance that Israel, when they were coming into the Promised Land, had come in through the Jordan River, and so the significance of John baptizing out there was like a re-entry into a rebirth of what
cool.
God was going to be doing. There's some more in the language. I can't quote all that. I was listening to people way smarter than myself, but they essentially talked about that was a really significant piece. Go out to the Jordan, be baptized, repent from our ways, and come back into the Promised Land afresh and anew. So there's some cool stuff there.
That's a really interesting thought because for those people who would have, everybody of that generation, they would have grown up there. They wouldn't have had any thought about the requirements of what was asked of them
Yeah.
when they went into the land.
Yeah.
Right? They would have been taught it maybe by the Pharisees, but
Yeah.
we know that the Pharisees weren't necessarily,
Yeah.
they were at least at times missing the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
And so that's a real cool.
Yeah, so to go out to the wilderness, only to come back in refreshed and repentant. It was a really interesting thought that I heard and came across. So.
And that also goes into the message we talked about last
Yeah.
weekend.
Yep.
Just the need for us to get out and go out into the wilderness.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Many reasons for that.
Yeah.
I was just noticing how close you are. Like,
And no barriers.
yeah, I know. Like, this is weird.
I know, eh?
I waited through our whole party on the weekend,
Yeah.
and not a weird thing. But as you were talking, I was just like, man, he's sitting
He's
close
so
to me.
close.
Well, so last week you were out of town and you were in the heat wave just out in BC.
Yeah.
But it was so hot that we decided we were going to open up the church on Wednesday and Thursday night for movies in case people wanted to get out of the
Right,
heat, right?
yeah.
And so the question was like, can we do it on Wednesday night? Because technically,
Yeah.
we're all still, everybody's got to come in wearing masks and everything.
We need
and
to
I'm
keep
like,
a list of who's here, all that stuff.
Yeah. And it was like at 6 o'clock Wednesday night we don't have to, but at 6 a.m. Thursday morning,
you're
we're
good.
like, or even midnight, 6
Yeah.
hours later we don't have to. It's like, no, we'll be fine.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it's just weird. We're in this weird place.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
things to get used to again, sitting beside somebody.
I know,
That's
eh?
good.
Yeah.
There's worse company
Am I
to
in your
have.
personal space?
Your fading is a little bit
I'm
tight
used
here.
to 6 feet of personal space all the time now. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we got a really interesting second question here, so let's get at her. It says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 18, the Lord says that the man shouldn't be alone and that he would make a helper for him. And then he proceeds to bring all the animals to the man. but the man did not find a suitable helper, or reed mate, I guess. My question is, did Adam lie with some of those animals while he was trying to find a suitable mate? Could that be why some primates have human features? Why would Adam not have done so if God was bringing them to him to find a suitable helper? Only when he decided none were suitable did God create woman. But it would seem a natural conclusion from those verses that Adam tried various animals out sexually. ...
I would disagree with that. We'll just start there. So really interesting, that word helper in verse 18, I will make a helper fit for him.
Yeah.
God uses that word helper at other places in the Bible to reference himself when he calls himself a helper. It is not just about sex.
No.
It is a word about companionship. And so I don't believe this verse is primarily talking about sex. No matter how you interpret the first 11 chapters of Genesis, I don't believe the focus of this is sex as much as a companion, someone who could walk through life with him.
Yeah. The language in Genesis, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, where it takes a shift, Adam in Genesis 1, or in the early parts of Genesis 2, is using Adam as a generality. So the word Adam means humanity, and then shifts to a singular, like this one person, male human Adam, in Genesis, getting to about this point. I can't remember exactly where it makes the shift of how it's using it. But Adam, humanity's command to go forth and multiply, is the job that is maybe where you're getting this question, but I think second to that is the one to subdue the earth, and really expand Eden is the ultimate purpose, to take what God has given in the Garden of Eden that's been made in Genesis, the beginning of Genesis 2, and to expand that for all of the earth to feel. And the only people that can do that is a ruler and one in communication with God. And Adam needs a helper in order to do that as well. And so the helper, to fulfill his goal, I remember the Bible Project talking about something. The helper is not some like assistant. It's not a lower term here. In fact, they went so far, if I can remember correctly, as to say the word Azer, the helper there, actually can have connotations towards, like you said, with it being God, like my salvation. Like I cannot fulfill my duty without this, and in order to complete my life's purpose, I cannot do this. It's an equal, if not like somehow like a need, a necessity there. And so I don't think the sexual part is necessarily needed. I'd question where the human characteristics come in, and we could get into a whole topic on evolution there. Well, I don't think we will this week, but I'd hold that evolutionary perspective is part of the answer to how we get to that stuff. But yeah, the helper was needed to complete God's
I'm
goal.
going to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Because you say, we're
Yes.
not going to get into this, but then I'm going to give you my opinion and
Well,
not
we're
allow
not
the others
gonna
to
debate
talk
the
to
whole-
it.
Hey, I'm going to give you my opinion fishing for somebody to ask a question next week.
No,
Okay, I'm all right with that. If you're fishing for next week, I'm just like,
I'm just saying. I think this is dealt with a separate issue. that is an answerable, feasible thing. We can talk about it another time if need be. I don't need to say any more than that. But human characteristics, I think, could be
I'm just
dealt
going to
with
leave
that
this
way.
bomb right here.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. If anybody wants us to defuse the bomb, they can submit the question. But now we're fishing.
nice. I think about this question, and I just think Leviticus, I think it's 18, has all the sexuality rules that Moses gave to the people when he came down off the mountain. If we believe that God is a God of order, then those rules were his order for how we were supposed to live, right?
Yep.
If we believe that Adam and Eve, or Adam, I guess, in this question, is alone in the garden with the animals and living in perfection,
Yep.
then I would make the assumption nothing was out of order yet.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't think that Adam's sleeping with the animals, because that's bestiality, and said is not the right way to do things, would be happening pre the fall of man.
Correct.
In chapter 3.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah, I would also say that. So the way Genesis is laid out, Genesis 2 is really a more detailed view of day 6 of Genesis chapter 1.
Right.
Right. So you
think?
take.
Oh, look at that. Oh, sorry. Okay, you go.
Are you thinking that it's not?
No. You go ahead.
Anywho,
Sorry.
my point is that it's after God created man and woman that he commissioned them to be fruitful and multiply.
Right.
Not before. Right? So this whole idea of sexuality didn't enter in until after, in Genesis 1, the male and the female were there.
Right. I'm also trying to find where it is. I'm sure it's right before it, where Adam has already begun his job trying to go and name the animals. I'm trying to find exactly where that begins. Anyways, it can't be there. Whatever, living creatures. This is right in that same section. Not good for man to be alone. Took every beast of the field, brought it to him, and see what he would call it. So that part too might be significant. I would say, just looking at this, it just came to mind quick of names in the Old Testament were very important, and they had to deal with purpose and calling and what somebody would do or what they would be used for. And so Adam naming the animals isn't just arbitrarily coming up with giraffe or rhino, but the naming there would have been specific to their job. And so as each one of these things has come by, naming it and its purpose, this purpose doesn't help me do my job, this purpose doesn't help do my job. And so seeing right off the bat, I think a visual forward also coming and going, that's not going to help me. None of these can help me do my job. So I think there's, I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking out of my...
Sorry, if we go back, you don't think that Genesis 2 is kind of a more detailed view of
Day 6? I don't think it can be. They're out of order. Genesis 2 is an entirely different order to Genesis 1, creation. We've got animals and stuff coming before the plants of the field, and all those things take place. I think Genesis 2 is a specific conversation about the unique spot of the Garden of Eden and what God is doing there when all the rest of creation has already been started.
So then does God create man 2 times?
I believe they're 2 complementary stories, Genesis 2 getting to the specifics of how God's relationship with humans started, whereas Genesis 1 is God's relationship to all of creation.
So basically, that's basically what I'm saying. I'm just expressing it differently.
But I think
in Genesis 1, in the 6 days of creation, on the 6th day, there's just this brief, and God made man, male and female. And then, but in Genesis 2, it just seems like it's the more detailed story of the creation of male and female.
But I don't think it's day 6, though, because in the beginning of Genesis 2...
But you don't hold to a literal 6 days.
No, I don't.
So then why are you fighting with me that it couldn't be a detailed version of the same story?
Because I think the days are out of order. It can't be just day 6. It could be a retelling of it, but it can't just be an extended version of day 6 because there's no rain. The plants are...
Okay, a retelling then.
Okay, that's better. That's fair. The order is very different of creation in Genesis 2 and from Genesis 1 to 2. The orders of the details of when things are created.
I've always looked at it and thought the purpose of Genesis 2 was to really focus in on that part of the story.
Right.
Otherwise, how do you reconcile those 2?
That could be a very big conversation. I think it's a generality. I think the creation of mankind in Genesis 1 is more than just 2 human beings. I think it's more than Adam and Eve. And I think the Genesis chapter 2 story is the specific creation and unique relationship of Adam and Eve to God, that they were then to take that to the rest of creation. I think there's probably something and some ones outside of the garden which would help understand through Genesis 1 who's Cain afraid of when he leaves the garden. How do they learn to sacrifice? Is that something new all of a sudden?
But even according to that, though, it says when no bush of the field was yet in the land. No matter how you do it, that problem is still there.
And that's where I'm going. I think it's unique to Eden. So God creates Eden in the very beginning of Genesis chapter 2. Where was it? And Yahweh planted a garden in Eden east, and there he put man who he had formed. So it's like this. Okay, I've always imagined this with like a visual. Did you ever play Roller Coaster Tycoon? Create a little area, and then you can drag these people and drop them in there. That's kind of how I see the Genesis 2 version of like, okay, creation's going, it started, but now I'm going to make this special place, and Eden's set up as a temple. in literature, it's set up to remind people of an ancient Near Eastern temple, and I'm going to place this human here. I'm going to be in a relationship with him. He's going to go forward, subdue the earth, and multiply and all those pieces, and bring this, my temple, my connection to me, out through all of creation. Is the Genesis 2 a specific relational story, whereas Genesis 1 is a general
So then are
creation
you
story.
saying that the story of Genesis 2 takes place before or at some point during this 7
After.
days?
After.
But then how is there no bush of the field yet in the land?
It's the land of Eden, the unique. I've set this one space apart.
But in Genesis 1, he already created plants. So he created all these plants and everything, and he just left this
Well,
one place
there could have
barren.
been deserts. There could
No,
have been all
I'm
sorts
honestly
of,
asking
totally.
because I don't feel like
Yeah.
there's an easy way to reconcile.
I don't think
that.
there is. I'm not saying it's foolproof. I'm just saying that's where I lean. As I take Genesis 1 and go, okay, the project's complete, and now he's looking at a specific area and working with this one spot and with this one set to start one human, and then go from there. That's how I've come to see it, and I'm sure we're both doing something to hold our views all together, and we know where we sit different spots in some things.
Well,
but
I wouldn't say I hold it very. The whole Genesis first few chapters are one that I don't hold any view really
Right.
tightly there, but I'm
Yeah.
just intrigued
Yeah, it'd
when
be hard
when
to do
someone
that.
is
Yeah.
adamant that this is the view.
Yeah,
I want to know, how do you arrive at that? How do you reconcile the issues
yeah,
that you say make a different view invalid?
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm coming at to you. You're like,
Yeah.
well, that can't be
Yeah.
an elaboration of the sixth day or an
Yeah.
expansion, a detailed view of the sixth day.
yeah.
But the same tension that you're saying exists
Totally.
in saying the view that I espouse was
Yep.
wrong exists with the way that
Oh, I wasn't
you-
saying it was wrong. I'm just going. Oh, I literally blurted it out loud.
Okay,
of,
that
oh,
you
really?
disagreed with.
Yes, I disagree.
Right?
I'm not saying that I think. I always say this when I talk about Genesis because it can be a touchy subject in some places where I've presented it. I believe God could have created the world in 7 seconds. Didn't need 7 days. I believe God could have created the world in 7 days if that's how He chose. I don't think the literature format of Genesis 1 and 2 is written to help solve any of these scientific problems from one.
I don't believe so
position.
either.
So I think it's us trying to then go out of curiosity and out of hope to understand things, but I don't see them as they're. I don't know. I guess we are maybe probably closer than we think. But I see Genesis 2 as a unique setting.
No, and that's
important.
cool. I just
Yeah.
wanted to know how you reconciled that issue because I agree with you. I look at the first few chapters of Genesis and I'm like, these are stories that are not the intention when these were first penned was not a scientific document.
No.
And we don't realize that our worldview has shifted so much in the last 500 years that we think of everything from this scientific view and everything's got to be rational and everything's got to be explained scientifically. When this book was written, they were not worried about that rational thinking. They were thinking on a more philosophical level, and it was different. It's just a different world.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel the need to hold any view in the first few chapters of Genesis too tightly. And I think anyone who does cling to a view very tightly is doing a disservice to the Bible. And I feel like we've talked about this a lot of times, that sometimes people say they love the Bible so much that they won't let it speak for itself.
Totally.
And they won't let it be the full book that it is. And even they won't let it have the tensions that it has. And that goes back to even the sermon I did on hell a couple of years ago, right? That people are like, wait a minute, that's not what I was ever taught. No, yes, I recognize it wasn't what people were taught. But I value the Bible enough to go, there are parts in it where there's tensions, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Yeah. Totally fair.
Perfect. Well, I think that's it then. We did agree on an answer for the question. We do not think that Adam slept with any animals, but we do think Genesis is an interesting book. And if you got questions about that, you can definitely send them in. We're out of questions this
That's
week.
why you're
so
the host. Look at that,
will,
eh?
Smooth.
We'll
Very
be
smooth.
ready for whatever you bring at us. I mean, this was a good one. I'm glad I read it before I just got live online.
Awesome.
Everybody have a great week. We will see you this weekend. Make sure you register for church. We want to know you're coming so we know how many people are going to be here and if we'll all fit. But we're excited. We'll see you then.
Awesome.